Alright everybody, what's going on? It's Great Scots here with the next installment of Medieval Dynasty. This game launched relatively recently, and I've been doing periodic updates, which I hope are a little bit better than the gameplay. The gameplay can take quite a while to power through, and so just kind of want to do some lessons learned, speculation, some light wish list stuff, but not too much of that. Mostly just talking about how the game works. So one of the things I had not done in the previous episode is kind of give an overview of what the settlement looks like. So if you haven't seen the previous ones, this is where I settled. I really liked the location. I mentioned that in a previous video. There's a lot of movement between settlements, and so it's convenient to stop by here, pick stuff up, usually drop stuff off, and we'll talk a little bit more about the location later. But it has a number of advantages. It's close to water for drinking. You should be able to see on the map right there, that is the fishing lodge. You can see it all the way down there underneath that tree. That's the actual fishing hut, I guess is the name. So there that is. On the other extreme, in terms of the buildings I've had constructed here, we have on the left up here, it's kind of hidden at night. You really need the torch out to see it. But this is the logging hut, which is going to need to get emptied pretty soon. And right over there, that's the hunting lodge, and so there's meat and leather usually in there. It's actually also a gathering lodge. My advice is don't bother with the gathering. It doesn't get you that much. It gets you berries, feathers, and that kind of stuff, and it just doesn't have very high value with respect to the weight. So these are two of the first buildings I built. This is the sewing, I don't remember what they call it, station or something like that. This was the workshop, which was kind of the earliest craftsman place. These are two of the simple houses that I built for the others. This thing right in front of me is it's my very simple house. It's even simpler than theirs, so I forget what that's called. This is the smithy. I don't remember if I said it in the last video, but I think I was kind of critical of this. I was like, well, you know, it's kind of expensive. It adds the textures. It doesn't really do all that much more. But iron construction is really important. This is food storage right here. So this right here, food storage, and I'll show you later. It's the resource storage. It's next to the workshop in a different house. What's nice about this is that the chest is a little broken. You can see it's only supposed to be able to hold 50 kilograms, but it's got about almost 3 times that amount in there. That's really, really handy, and it probably explains why you can see that I have a lot of food. And I've had about 4,000 food because I've been able to cram it in there. I also have I've made stuff. And it's the stuff that you make has a much higher nutritional content than just the kind of raw materials that went into it. And so, yeah, no problem with food. The problem is always wood. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but I'm still doing the overview. That's the tavern. That's a hog I recently purchased. This is the barn. This is an important building for a number of reasons, and this is the recently purchased pigsty. It did not come with the pig. I had to buy it. This, I believe, is the third simple house. And so then this is resource storage, and very important, very great that you can go way over. You can see that I'm only supposed to be able to hold 300 kilograms, but I can actually get 467 in there. I've not experienced that with any other building besides the food one. So, and it's really important because the logs and firewood go in here for your villagers, and so this is where, for whatever reason, it seems like I used to have a worker assigned to this building, and he didn't do anything except standing here all day, and he never brought down the stuff from the hunting lodge or the whatever it's called, woodshed into here. and he should have done at least one, and preferably, I guess not both of those because it wasn't his job to get food. But also the person I had assigned to food storage didn't do anything and just stood there. And so right now with the workers I have, there's quite a bit of, in the fall there's a bit to harvest. We're going to have a little bit to plant, but that's why I have 2 people in the barn. I assigned them as field workers. I found when you actually assign them to be farmer, I wasn't getting all that much out of them, and I think that was partially my fault, but I also don't know that I want them making that decision. Now this person was supposed to be switched off of a gatherer. I'm not sure why. It looks like it's reverted back. It's really worthless. I mean, she has other talents. I might actually put her to work crafting. Maybe just stone and wood and stuff. I feel like that would be fine. But it's really not worth it for the berries and some feathers. I assigned Lesota. I assume his farming skill carries over to animal breeding, so he's now in the pigsty. He was the one that was doing nothing in the resource building. Pepin, pretty much all he's good for is hunting, but that's fine. He's good at that. And Mildreda, the lumberjack. She's not the best. I mean, Scarbimira, I guess, with her extraction skill of 7. But right now I have her on farming. Maybe I should move her to lumberjack, but right now we're okay on wood supply. As long as you split the logs into firewood, you should have no problem. If you only move the logs and the firewood that's already chopped at the woodshed, it might get dicey in the winter, especially if you don't constantly empty that woodshed. Honestly, you should probably try to manually empty it once every day. So, there are 3 days per season. It's probably going to get close to full, and so you'd want to do that. Last stuff. So this is one field. You can see that they just harvested wheat. They're plowing some of it. This field here is currently empty. Well, you can't see well, there's nothing here now. It needs to be plowed, manured, and in the fall, the one big thing that I'm looking to plant is not in here. I believe it's oat, and I have a lot of wheat. I had a lot of flax, so that's what I'm going to do. If I didn't mention it already, where we are in the game relative to the last video, we're about 1.5 years forward from the last game. I think I was at the end of the spring of the 3rd year, and you can see from the little bar at the top, we are in the middle of the fall in the 4th year. So we're about to end the 4th year. I think I'll probably come to disagree with these things in future videos, but right now, despite all of the stuff it looks like you need to have, and there is quite a bit of stuff, and you do need, right, so you got your health, you got to stay alive, you need food, you need water. That's all true, but I'm starting to think of everything in terms of time, and that the real resource that matters in this game is time. It's not so much money, I mean, although that does potentially save you time, but there are also ways to make money, and it's always a kind of question of time. I think economists would really appreciate this because there's a lot in here about efficiency, and basically your resource to efficiently allocate is your time. You can't really manipulate it. The seasons and the days move at their own time. I guess your choice, your ability to manipulate it might lie with whether you choose to sleep, and then you'll have your maximum amount of time. But that's one way I'm starting to think of things, and it's affected the way I play. So one thing, now they're not in here right now, but one thing that really got me fed up in the end of year 3, early year 4, is that I was getting quests that took way too long for benefits that were way too small. And for the most part, they were hunting quests, particularly the ones where they want you to go out and kill like a half dozen wolves. So online sleuthing, you can find, if you don't know, a number of normal wolf locations, and I would go to them at night, I'd go to them during the day. I got up to 5 out of 6 wolves, and then the next 4 or 5 locations were all empty. and at that point, I just said, you know what, I'm going to fail this mission, because it took up about a day and a half in the spring of this year, which is just way too much time for, I think it was like 2 or 3 Dynasty, right? And where is it here? We have almost 600, and so I ended up failing. I lost 1 Dynasty. I was like, whatever. That was a terrible use of my time. That day and a half, I could have made a run to the iron mine. If you don't know where it is, it's right about here. You can see where the cursor is. I usually look for this little dot that is the, I think, beginning of this stream, and I just look above it, slightly north, and that's the entrance to the iron mine. I can make a run from I could take stuff from my settlement, take it to Gustovia to sell, so that I'm pretty much empty. I'll have 20-25 kilograms. Run down here, get the iron, run back, smith it, usually into iron hammers, which I'm finding are probably my main moneymaker. It takes only 2 iron and 1 stick, and the actual selling price, no matter where you sell it, is 70 coin. And so for me, that's and they only weigh 1.5 kilograms, so you can bring a bunch of them with you. And if you return from a mining trip, you got 22 iron, that's 11 hammers, that's 770 currency, and you can probably do that at least twice a day. But there are other things that go on, and so I don't know how many just straight days you want to dedicate to it, but if you could do it once a day in the game or twice a season, I think you're going to be fine with money. You can see the tax bill, which I think is low. I don't quite understand why it's showing up this low. When I paid taxes in the spring, they were twice that. And I've actually added buildings. The pigsty I added, and something else that apparently didn't make much of an impression because I can't remember what it was. But it doesn't seem to have had much of an effect on taxes, except that taxes seem to have gone down. So the recommendation would be to avoid those quests, and so this does go back to something I mentioned in the previous video, which is don't take quests that look like they're going to take a long time. There are also a lot of simple quests, like laughably simple quests, where someone in Gustovia, whatever the heck this place is, wanted a couple berries and a few pieces of meat for 5 or 7 reputation. I was like, sure. That's an easy one. So my recommendation stands: save before you do any of these exclamation points. And if it looks like it's going to be a BS mission that's going to take you a long time to get very little, your time is better suited to doing other things. Don't take it. Just load back in before you got the option to take the mission and play from there. Now, on that note, in the spring or summer, I got a kind of broken mission from Rolnica. There was a family dispute between a husband and a wife, and the husband wanted me to talk to the wife to see if they could reconcile, and she would not talk to me. It's like if you go up to someone who's sleeping or going to go to sleep, and it says this person is not interested in interacting with you right now. It said that with her all the time, in the middle of the day, and what had to happen, but it didn't say it in the journal, like here. Well, it doesn't say wait till the next season, but it says that on other ones. I had to wait till the next season, and then I went back, but it never told me that. So that was one of those I had also written off as, well, I'm just going to fail this mission. That one actually carried over to the next season. I think if I had known that at the time, I would have just reset it. I would have reloaded in before it, because I would have felt like, well, this is a mission I can't pass. Or it's going to eat up an incredible amount of time for very little. The other thing, besides time as probably the resource that matters most, is to think about your sequencing. And there we have our very mobile pig. And sequencing means a number of things. I mentioned already that firewood is important, and if you're coming in from a run from another village or a trip to the iron mine, empty the woodshed. Right? Even if it takes 2 or 3 trips up that hill to the woodshed and down, and get your stuff in here. Empty that woodshed out. It only holds 50 kilograms. Firewood is very important. And when you go out of it, your villagers become unhappy. That's one thing. I would think about your responsibility versus what you want your NPCs doing. So we have these two ladies working the field. They're actually pretty good at harvesting stuff. Now, I have not told them to plant and harvest anything. I'm actually kind of interested to see what they're doing. Oh, I guess I can read the seeds over here. I don't think wheat is what I wanted. I think it's supposed to be oats in the fall is what I'm looking to plant. It's not in the pigsty. It's in the barn. I left all the seeds in here. Oh, it's rye grain. That's what I want to be planting right now, but they seem to have taken things on themselves. I have wheat in here that I have to... I got to take it over to the station. I'm kind of getting my next point. I want to just stay here. But I did say this in a previous video. Let your NPCs in the village, let them do natural resource extraction. And I define that broadly. Let them do the hunting, and hunting is better than fishing. It's more efficient. It brings in more nutrition. So go with hunting over the fishing lodge. I built both. It made sense at the time. It doesn't make sense anymore. And I didn't know what I was going to get from the fishing lodge. It's underwhelming. So again, if you want to be efficient and get the most out of what you have, I guess in addition to time being a resource, you have your villagers, but they're really just a source of surplus time. And so we're back to time is the resource you need to efficiently allocate. While they're getting the raw stuff, you do the finished stuff. I don't even really like them planting because, as you can see, they're kind of planting things that I don't want them to do. And the specific resource they're using I don't want them to use is manure. Because manure it's not expensive. I don't know if they left. Well, there's 48 still in here, but it's heavy. It weighs half a kilogram each. So you just saw that 48, servings of manure weigh 24 kilograms. And so it takes time to transport that stuff from wherever you're going to get it. You can get it from Gustovia. I think you can get it from almost every village. Maybe not every village, but almost every village. And that's one of the reasons why I had the pigsty and the one pig. The pig cost, I think it was $1,500, which sounds like a lot, but you can see I got $3,500 left. My taxes look like they're going to be low, and you can see that they produce a little bit of manure, not much. But yeah, kind of like no matter where this guy goes, that's just what he does. He just stands around. All right. I can also craft animal feed in here for them, so that's good thing that they're close together. And the manure for the fields, I thought it just made sense to have the pigsty pretty close. Maybe it could have been between the fields, but I might actually replace. I might build another field between those two. I'm not sure yet. But an example of a pipeline, and I don't know that there's anything this large, is how you produce linen thread. Now, I realized a year or so ago that linen thread is used in a lot of things. It's used in almost everything you need to sew. It's used in bow construction, and it's very expensive. If you want to buy it from any of the people who are selling, it's 100 coin per linen thread. And I was like, gee, that's back when I had less money. I was like, that's a lot. So, how do you make it? You do it with flax, and that means you got to have the fields plowed. You got to have the manure down. You got to plow the manure in. You got to sow the flax seed in the spring. You harvest it in the summer. You are not done. You then get the flax that you harvested. You bring it over here, and you thresh it, and that will give you flax seed. So you can see one of the things that happened is I now have a ton of flaxseed. And you get that much flax stalk, which is quite heavy. And one of the things I also found is that I probably only planted about a third as much flax, maybe a quarter. And so it's one of those things you actually end up with more of it over time. And so I didn't need to buy as much. I didn't know that at the time. But you get your flax stalk, and then you got to bring it over to your sewing station, and you get your flax stalk, and every 10 flax stalk on this spinning wheel, so I can't do it right now, turns into a piece of linen thread. You can see with 48 linen thread, I've spent some time doing this. Like I said, you need it for other things. One of the things I've been meaning to make, is this water skin. And I now have the resources to do it. It just saves me a few trips to get some water. This, I believe, is once you have wool. I'm not even at the point of having wool and sheep and all the rest. So once you do all those things, you finally have your own linen thread. And for whatever reason, it now looks much cheaper for me than it does when it looks like I'm going to buy it in town or when I've bought it before. So I don't know if they're telling me the actual selling price I'll get, which would make sense. It usually seems like I get to sell things for about a third or a quarter of what I could buy them. I'll have to investigate that. But that was a pipeline, and there's a lot you need there. I'm getting to the point where I can produce almost all of it. Now that I have the seeds, and the seeds come back after the harvest, the real missing piece is the time to do it all and manure. And I don't think the one hog is going to produce nearly enough because we grow wheat, flax, oat, and every once in a while I think I'm going to do food, but probably not that frequently. Yeah, so on that note, because the food is so good and we still have a ton of it over here in the food storage, and again, this is just in the food storage. There's a lot of meat I haven't done anything with, but soup, stew, and the potage, that's the kind of high calorie stuff. The tavern, which I think is pretty good, it is, I think, also full or close to full. Yeah, it's pretty close to full, but we still have cabbage that I think I grew a year or two ago. Haven't used it up. Carrot, I dropped some fish here because you can grill it and upgrade it. Tons of potage, and I don't think this figures into the food count until it gets moved over to that shed. So there's stuff here that doesn't even need to be made, and there's quite a bit you can make. But food is also a pipeline, but it's one that, for the time being, I don't really see myself investing any more time in. So we are now at the end, and so these are just quick points. If I did show you any of this area in the previous video, you'll notice that the trees have now regrown inside the settlement. These were all down before, these were down, those were down. Pretty much everything was clear cut. There was no trees between here, and so I don't like this. I think they matured way too quickly. I hope the devs get this kind of timed right. I understand that there's also a downside, which is that you could quickly deforest an area and then people are going to be frustrated. So maybe somewhere in the middle, but I don't even know if these things were shrubs, and then the very next year I walk out my door in the spring or winter and boom, full-grown pine. And so that, yeah, there was a clear view of the water. I don't even know if there was a single tree between here and the water, but after just a year or so, they grew back. So if you're worried about it, wondering about it, yeah, they're there, which means you're going to have, for building construction, for firewood, you're going to have an abundant amount of wood. You don't need to worry about running out of it. You do need to worry about making sure you've harvested enough for firewood that you keep this up. In the winter, this was at like 6.1 per hour, kind of what food is now. And I just hadn't been paying attention to it while I was on an iron trip, and they ran out of wood and they started getting mad. Oh, the last thing is that I think in my previous video I was talking about when you have the wooden hammer and you right click onto the wheel and it gives you an option to repair, but you couldn't repair, and so I was speculating, well, maybe it's broken. It's not. It does work, and you can repair certain things, but you can't do it until it says broken in the status. So the barn earlier this year, when we moved to a new season, the stats came up as broken, and I think it was down at like 70-something%. And then once it says broken, then you bring the hammer, then you go to repair, then you go up to the building, and then it shows up that green color, which tells you can do something. And it just needed some stick or straw or something, whatever it was. It was part of the roof that broke. It was not a big deal. But the mechanic is not broken. It's just not necessarily something you can do at will. Like the workshop, even though it says it's 68%, I'll try this. I don't know where I left the hammer. It's probably in here. Yeah, so it's in here. We'll put it here. We'll equip it and repair. So everything's green means it's fine, but it would show up red if I couldn't. And so even though it's at 68% for the smithy, I don't really see anything I can do in terms of upgrades. I think if I can make daub, which I haven't unlocked the technology, but I'm starting to get some of the material. I need clay as well. Downgrade, I don't know why you would do that. And then just other building stuff. So that's that. But yeah, repairs do work. Yeah, and just to remind you of the big points as I sign off for this Lessons Learned from Medieval Dynasty, it is about an efficient use of your time, and time is the primary resource. You have access to everything you need to survive. You can be a one-man band, or a one man, a one woman, and a air band for a long time, or you can move up too quickly, and I've done that too. But you need to figure out, if you are going to upgrade and you want to advance, how do you do so efficiently? What do you need to do? What do your NPC villagers need to do? And when do you need to do it? Like, how frequently do you have to empty the woodshed? Should you be making iron runs? Like, I plan to make more iron runs in the winter, because I know there's no St. John wort or the health one, the plantain, that you can harvest, and so I think iron would be a good use of some downtime in the winter. I generally do crafting at night when I can't see, and I wouldn't want to be hunting or other things. Just go into one of these sheds, make firewood, make potage, make iron hammers. There's no downtime once you realize what it is you need to do. And then second, it's probably less frequent, but it's still there. Think about things in terms of pipelines, from the seeds and the natural resources all the way up to the finished products, and how you're going to sequence the building of the parts to get that pipeline up and running. Once you've done that, I think you're well on your way. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something from it. If you know, one thing I've not been able to figure out is if you can assign NPCs, so NPCs that are in here, I can assign them to jobs, but I can't give them specific duties within those jobs. So I can't tell field workers to plow certain fields, or to use manure. They kind of know to use manure, but right now I'd like them to stop sowing wheat, and I'd like them to sow, I think it was rye. And I haven't been able to figure out if you can do that. I may not be able to do that, which is fine, but it's one of the things I want to investigate and see if I can grab. So hopefully there'll be more to learn in the future, and again, if you pick up the game and play it, it is a good time. I think it's a good time, and hopefully I'll see you back here, or have you back here hearing from me in the next one.